Let's talk about Player of the Year, because this is one I think that's always up for debate, because you have to talk about levels. Teams, obviously, that play longer in the postseason have more opportunities to showcase certain players. So tell me who your Player of the Year is.
If we're picking best player, you would say Mac Hippenhammer, but we're talking Player of the Year. The best player, high school football this year, is Peter Morrison. I don't think it's even close. You know, setting records like he did at the state championship game. Not an overly big guy. He's just a little squirt, like 5'10". But his ability to throw the football, great arm, has some escapability, and he proved that in the state championship game. He really got rocked a lot down in Indianapolis against Lawrenceburg, was able to stay in there and then buy some time a couple times. So, yes, we have Mac Hippenhammer going to Penn State. You would say he's the best player, best athlete in the area, I would say, but Player of the Year on the field this year, no doubt, Peter Morrison.
And the funny thing about Peter Morrison is, you know, he's a sophomore, his brother graduates, he's battling for the quarterback job with the Sparks kid, and Sparks wins it out. He's a year older, a year bigger, a year stronger. And the thing that's impressive about Peter is he waited his turn. He got converted into a receiver, which I think helped him ultimately in the end, knowing how to run routes, knowing what his receivers were going through, and where they would be at certain times. This is a guy that waited patiently 1 year as a starting quarterback, and he finished with 3,980 yards this season.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that tells you something. He was a junior wide receiver, and here he is with a scholarship offer to go to Concordia University if he wants to play football at the next level. Hopefully he gets some more. But for all these guys that think they have to be playing quarterback sophomore, junior, or whatever position, bide your time. I mean, it can happen. And look at Peter Morrison. Not only did he have a phenomenal year, they go down and win a state championship with a big trophy, and he's going to be able to go to college if he wants to play quarterback somewhere. So you don't always have to be playing a starter as a junior. You just don't, and I think it's a lesson for everybody out there. And
you mentioned Hippenhammer. That was the guy I had second on my list. I think, as you stated, if you were going to project who was going to be the next best big thing from the Fort Wayne area on the next level, I think Mac would be that guy because of his speed and his escapability. But his numbers, I mean, they were good. Peter Morrison's were just spectacular. Speaking of big numbers, Andrew McCormick I also had on my short list of guys. You're talking about a guy who completes a high percentage of passes in that offense, who runs the football pretty effectively as well, and really just a total package at the quarterback position.
Yeah, McCormick, a great quarterback as a junior, will only continue to get better. I think, obviously, East Noble didn't have the run that a lot of people thought they could, and Andrew struggled at times, like the New Haven game, really struggled too. So he's going to get better. Phenomenal stat line, and he could be an early candidate for Player of the Year next year. But you were talking Mac Hippenhammer, and yes, his ceiling is probably higher than Peter Morrison's. You know, in 15 years, people could look back and say, why, how was Mac Hippenhammer not Player of the Year that year? Obviously, a tremendous talent, but when you have a wealth of guys like Snyder does, you didn't need Mac Hippenhammer to be crazy good all the time. I mean, you looked at Money Woods and Christian Covington, both 1,500-yard rushers, 1,200-yard rushers with 15 touchdowns. They were just tremendous. And you looked outside and the players they have. So it's a credit to what Snyder was able to do with a team. You don't need a guy like Mac Hippenhammer putting up gaudy numbers.
And a couple of other guys I had on my short list, Nishan Jones from New Haven. This guy's wrapped up a stellar career. Jim Rowland said over 4,000 yards in terms of his rushing total over his career. He had, let me see, 28 plus 6 plus 3. What is that?
37.
37? There you go. That's the North Side.
Yeah, it's the North Side education
right
coming
there,
through.
FWC.
Thank you, Fwix.
But fantastic season. Obviously, New Haven had a very good year. He was a big part of that. And also, I had Trayvon McCarter.
Yeah.
You know, Trayvon McCarter, again, we talked about at the beginning of the season, if he's playing, if Harding still exists, he's playing at Harding, or he's playing at Snyder, or he's playing, you know, somewhere else that gets a little bit more attention. Everybody knows Trayvon McCarter. I think people do to a certain extent if you follow football to a certain degree here in Fort Wayne, but he would be a household name for the Friday night fans if he were playing perhaps somewhere else.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people think, well, he should be doing that against the Southern Wells and South Adams and teams like that. But, yeah, you could put him on any team in the SAC, and he's doing something comparable against the best in the area. So you can't knock him for playing for Woodland as opposed to one of the SAC schools.